In those days, the summer before 8th grade, my best friend was a tomboy nicknamed Toby. Her mom named her October on account of her golden reddish hair. October Meadows was tall and slim and could throw a Nerf football with deadly accuracy. I once saw her angrily use that ball to knock a lit cigarette from the mouth of Baby Cheeks Bryce from across the street. They say the universe was born in a violent explosion. Within that maelstrom did swirl the tiny elements that were destined to travel across the expanse of time and distance, arriving at such a moment and at such a place that two particular souls might come into connection and remain as one until the end of all things. I came to feel this applied to myself and Toby. But as that summer closed, I had reason to grow anxious about the interlocked destiny of our spirits. For Toby was moving to Boston. Her parents were taking her there to be near the fine hospitals that city is known for. Illness of some kind had settled into her, the only secret she ever kept from me. An hour before midnight, we stood in my living room looking at old family photos above the fireplace. The old house had been in my family for generations. My father was away on business, while my mother had taken her sleeping pills. Soon, we were leaving to meet Baby Cheeks and Big Show Morris in the cemetery, where we planned to catch ghosts. As always, Toby settled on a big old snapshot that was taken generations ago in front of the house. She made me tell her the name of each family member. "This one's your grandpa, right?" "Henry." "And your grandma, Agnes?" I nodded. She loved the sound of those names no one used anymore. Toby seemed to think the long ago past was not another time, but rather another place, a land she might one day visit. I guess she wanted to know everyone's name in case she got there. Inevitably, her attention centered on the mysterious young woman twirling under the hand of my Uncle Irving. Mysterious only in that my family never could say who that girl was. We only knew her as the dancer, and only that based on this photo, where she was frozen in a perpetual twirl, laughing, refusing to be captured by the photographer. Everyone else, a dozen family members, kept muscles clenched, their faces smiling or serious, depending on what look they wanted frozen in time. Only Irvin ignored the camera, his attention absorbed by the laughing rebel spinning under his fingers. "You sure no one knows who she is?" "My uncle died a bachelor." "I guess he let her get away." She looked hard into my eye when she said it, a playful challenge. I knew, dense as I was, she wanted me to kiss her then. But I was too slow, and Toby was the type to keep moving. "Come on, we'll be late." And she pulled me out the door into the cricket song night. We each grabbed a mason jar from the porch for catching ghosts. I didn't really believe, of course, that such a thing could be done, but Big Show insisted his mama said it would work. Did Toby believed that it might work? She was not a girl whose eyes you could pull the wool over. When we bargained with other kids over trading cards, we usually let her do most of the talking, and she never did go for that Santa down the chimney stuff, though she kept it to herself. But there was no way we were having an adventure without her, and I guess we might not have had the guts to go through with it on our own. We turned down a long private road that led to the cemetery. There were no streetlights here, and the moon had stayed hidden the whole way. The cricket song grew quieter, and the wind whispered. Toby took in a long breath, as though tasting the night air. Looking back, I think everything just seemed delicious to her then, every scent, sound, and sight. But I was anxious. No, not about ghosts, and not the fact we might get in trouble, but that she was leaving. Her folks were selling the house and everything. And we didn't have no cyber back in those days. Long-distance calls cost money, which left letters as the only option. and I was skeptical about letters. I might say stuff no fellow ever meant to say. Suddenly she tripped and almost fell. She had become more clumsy recently. She cursed under her breath, then laughed. Worrying about her gave me the courage to do something I never would have otherwise done. I held her hand, and she let me. I can still feel the shock of that to this day. My heart was going faster. Her hand was long and slender, a little rough in places from gripping a Louisville slugger, but still soft. She didn't say anything. I think she knew how scared I was. After a time walking, the moon poked part of its face from behind the towering cloud. She stopped, still holding my hand, and looked at the moon. "Like a camera's eye," she whispered in awe. And then the idea hit her. She lifted my hand up in the air. "Come on," she said. "Twirl me like in the photo." Unsure in my role, I let go her hand a little so that our fingers were still locked. And she did it. Right there on the empty road under the eye of the moon, she spun around like a ballerina. Well, maybe not so much. She giggled knowing she was no dancer and stumbled just a little. But she tried again. My eye was drawn to the moon, which went a little more behind the cloud. But I worried the moment would end. "You're not supposed to look at the camera, silly. Look at me, like in the picture." I never looked at someone so hard in all my life. She twirled a few more times, giggling. Then, slightly out of breath, still smiling, she stopped and faced me. The moonlight brightened on her face. I wanted nothing more out of life but to kiss her. But from ahead we heard our pals calling us now. "Come on," they said. "Almost midnight." She loped toward them, leaving me to catch up. No longer did we hold hands. The tiny cemetery was behind the Little League field, an isolated place we had discovered after Booger Reed hit the longest home run anyone had ever heard of, and both teams went looking for the ball in the woods. It was the perfect place for our little experiment. Baby Cheeks held 2 mason jars while Big Show held a gallon-sized plastic water jug. Toby shined a small flashlight on it. "Pond water," Big Show huffed excitedly. "For the jars." "Gotta hurry," whispered Baby Cheeks. Even in the moonlight, you could make out his flushed face. "Almost midnight." "Let's do it," Toby said a little too loud for our comfort. "Where?" I asked. "Next to the tombstone?" I suddenly didn't want to go too close to those graves. Big Show was already lumbering toward a spot. "Nah, on the edge. Let the ghosts that want to come to us." Arriving at the chosen place, we held our jars for him to fill half with swampy water. "Oof," sniffed Baby Cheeks. "Can't figure why a ghost would want to take that." "Ain't just any pond water," Big Show explained. "From Whiskey Pond. They used to bury bad folks nearby in unmarked graves 'cause they said a soul can't resist its water. So if any of 'em got a notion to go a-hunting, they'd get drawn into the pond first, like moths to a flame." We covered the jars and placed them on the ground around a lit candle. I guess moths weren't the only thing drawn to flames. We lay in the grass behind the jars. Baby Cheeks took out a butt and reached to light it on the candle. But a frown from Toby made him pocket it. Everything grew very solemn. The business of attracting old souls was serious stuff. Baby Cheeks shined a flash on several of the tombstones. "What's that star on 'em?" "Star of David," Toby said. "It's a Jewish cemetery." A hoot and owl in the distance made everyone except Toby jerk our heads. Seeing her unafraid, we settled down. For what we felt like a long time, no one said anything. To be honest about it now, I don't think any of us was gonna speak until she did. In any tense situation, we looked at Toby to lead us. Toby said softly. "The dancer. I know it." "What dancer?" asked Baby Cheeks. I studied Toby's face in the candlelight. She wasn't fooling. I'd never seen her more serious, not even the time she played quarterback for us against the rich kids from Tower Hill. "How do you know it?" I asked gently. She took a jar in hand and brought it close to the candle. Pond gunk swirl within the water. "They wouldn't let 'em be together," she said. "Her and Irving." The mouths on Big Show and Baby Cheeks opened very slowly. Finally, Big Show asked, "Did we get one?" "Don't be afraid," she said, intently staring into the jar, though I wasn't sure if she was talking to us or it. She held the jar in front of me, with the candle behind it. "Do you see her?" I studied the churning cloud of sludge within, and I did believe I saw it. And maybe I do believe it now. A little up from the bottom of the jar, the swirling sediment seemed to be trying to form into something more solid. Baby Cheeks and Big Show crawled over to take a look, their mouths still hanging open. "I think I see it," gasped one of them. "Yeah," agreed the other. "If you listen," Toby told us, "you can hear her." We became so quiet our breathing sounded like a distant storm. The trees creaked and the crickets all but slept. "I think I hear," said Big Show. Baby Cheeks nodded nervously. Then, in that sudden way she always sprang into action, Toby was on her feet, holding the jar carefully and striding for the road. I had to jog to catch up to her. "Where's he buried?" she asked me. "Who?" "Irvin, your uncle." "Over at Spider Gates." The oldest cemetery in town was famous for the wrought iron gates shaped like giant webs. Our other two pals caught up to us as we found our way back to the roads lit by streetlights. Toby walked at a frantic pace, and I worried about her tripping, but I didn't dare grab her hand now. If you can imagine the strangeness of walking over a mile with 3 friends and no one saying a word, you can understand that this was no longer an adventure. I tried to see her face, but Toby stayed half a step in front of us, staring straight ahead. We arrived at the larger cemetery. Me and Baby Cheeks and Big Show stood inspecting the closed gates with their weird spirals. It seemed a violation of something more than just rules to climb them at this hour, but Toby didn't hesitate, going right over. We boys looked at each other for a moment, then struggled over the gates ourselves. She waited for us only because she had no idea where Irving was. She kept her face in shadow. Gone was her usual playfulness. I felt this strange urgency in her movements, in her breathing, in the way she held the jar. I directed her to the old crypt, owned by my family, where I figured Irvin must be. Dug into the side of the small hill, the crypt had an iron door. Several generations of my family found their final rest there, and perhaps one day I will as well. There was no ceremony about what Toby did next. After unscrewing the cap, she simply poured the water by the entrance, some of it running along the stone base under the door. In this way, the dancer reunited with my uncle, I suppose. Then, Toby turned to me, only feet away, and looked right into my eyes. Her face was wet and puffy. If she wanted to say something, she did not. If she wanted to do something, she did not. We all went home, and if someone said anything, I don't remember it. I had set out on a lark to find ghosts, unsure of their existence, but had returned with a feeling that my own life was realer and heavier than I ever imagined. The next morning, I used what folks now call a landline to call Toby, but there was no answer. I tried several times that day, and the next as well. To my horror, I learned afterwards that her family had moved up north to Massachusetts. I'd not hear from her ever again.